A single human ship drifted through the endless dark, its engines humming softly as the crew laughed about how lost they were. No one on board realized that a simple mistake would change everything they knew about the universe. The navigator, a young officer named Carter, stared at the blinking lights on his console and frowned because the numbers did not make sense. He was sure the jump coordinates had been correct, yet here they were in a star system that did not match any chart in human databases. The captain leaned forward in his chair, a tall woman with calm eyes. She asked Carter what happened, her voice sharp but steady. Carter swallowed and admitted that he must have miscalculated by a fraction. The ship had jumped not into empty safe space but somewhere completely unknown. Before anyone could argue, the sensors began to scream with warnings. Shapes filled the dark ahead, huge metallic forms gliding with a silent grace that felt unnatural. The crew froze as dozens, then hundreds of massive alien ships surrounded them. Each ship was larger than entire cities, their hulls carved with glowing runes that pulsed like living veins, and still the human crew could only stare. The communications officer whispered that signals were coming in, strange voices layered with static, sharp and cold, asking for immediate surrender. The words echoed through the cabin like a sentence of death. But the humans did not panic. Instead, they looked at one another with awkward half smiles as if the situation were not serious. One of the engineers even joked that it looked like a parking violation with giant space whales. The rest of the crew chuckled nervously, but the captain only leaned back in her chair, her eyes calm as stone, and said, "Tell them we are just passing through." The alien fleet reacted with silence, long heavy silence, like the whole of space was holding its breath. Then a single reply came through, dripping with disbelief. "Humans, you have entered the sovereign heart of the Galactic Empire. Surrender your vessel or be destroyed." The crew glanced at each other as if the words were too dramatic to believe. Carter muttered under his breath about the Empire sounding like a bad science fiction novel, and the others stifled their laughter. The captain kept her face still and answered in a tone that sounded bored, "We will not surrender. This is a mistake, and mistakes happen." For a moment it seemed the aliens would attack. Their weapons glowed across the fleet, thousands of cannons charging enough to burn entire planets, and the humans sat there quietly. One officer even poured coffee, his hands steady. The Empire had fought countless enemies before, savage species, ruthless machines, ancient predators, but never had they seen a race react to overwhelming power with casual indifference. The alien commander on the flagship fumed. He was a creature of tall stature with silver skin and burning eyes. He could not understand how these fragile humans showed no fear. His advisors whispered that perhaps humanity was hiding something, perhaps Earth held weapons beyond imagining. The commander hesitated, unwilling to destroy them too quickly. Inside the human ship, Carter checked his console and reported calmly that their small vessel had no weapons worth mentioning compared to the Empire's fleet. They were like ants before a mountain. Yet he smiled and said they should ask if the Empire had a docking bay so they could talk face to face. The captain agreed without hesitation. The reply from the Empire came back with rage and suspicion, but also with a strange unease. They granted permission to dock, though every gun remained aimed at the tiny human craft. As the human ship slid into the massive hangar, the crew stared at the alien structure's towers of shining metal spiraling like frozen lightning, lights brighter than suns bathing the bay. Yet the humans were unimpressed. One engineer muttered that the place looked like a high-end shopping mall, and everyone chuckled again. The aliens marched forward, soldiers clad in black armor holding weapons that could erase the humans in an instant, but when they saw the relaxed way the humans stepped out, they faltered. The captain walked with steady steps, her hands behind her back, her eyes scanning the soldiers without a flicker of fear. Carter followed, scratching his head as if wondering about lunch, not survival. The alien commander met them, his voice booming through the hall. He demanded to know why humans dared to trespass into the Empire's most guarded system. The captain answered simply, "We made a wrong turn." The words echoed across the hangar. Silence followed as thousands of soldiers stared in disbelief. Never in the Empire's long history had an alien spoken to them with such casual tone. No pleading, no trembling, no reverence, just honesty and indifference. The commander tried to intimidate them. He described the Empire's history, the countless enemies they had crushed, the worlds they had burned. He spoke of fleets larger than stars and armies that stretched beyond imagination, but the humans only listened politely, and Carter even yawned quietly. The commander's voice grew louder, his threats harsher, but the humans did not change. The captain asked calmly if there was a restroom nearby. Because the trip had been long, the soldiers shifted uncomfortably. Some even looked away as if unsure what was happening. Back on their ship, the rest of the crew waited, watching the feed with growing amusement. They began betting on how long it would take before the aliens either surrendered out of confusion or stormed off in frustration. One of them said that maybe the Empire needed therapy, not war. The alien commander was furious, yet beneath his fury was a new fear. He realized these humans were not afraid of him or his empire. That made them unpredictable, dangerous. If they were reckless enough to stroll into the heart of the Empire without a second thought, what else were they capable of? He ordered the humans to be taken into custody, but when the soldiers approached, the captain raised one eyebrow and asked softly, "Is this really necessary?" The soldiers froze, their instincts screaming that something about these humans was not normal. The commander snarled and ordered again, but hesitation rippled through his troops. At that moment the hangar lights dimmed, a ripple spread across the Empire's fleet, sensors went wild, something massive was approaching from the void, something that even the Empire feared. The commander shouted for his ships to prepare for battle, forgetting the humans in his alarm, but the humans simply stood there watching calmly as though the end of the galaxy was just another event in their day. The shadow moved closer on the screens. It was enormous, ancient, its shape impossible to describe, as if the stars themselves bent around it. The Empire's soldiers trembled, their voices shaking as they identified it, an old enemy thought to be long dead, one that had once nearly destroyed the Empire before. The commander turned to the humans, expecting them finally to break into panic, to scream, to beg for safety. Instead the captain tilted her head and said in a flat voice, "Interesting." That one word cut deeper than any weapon. The aliens had known enemies who raged, enemies who wept, enemies who fought to the last, but never enemies who stood calm in the face of certain destruction. The Empire began to wonder if perhaps these humans were not lost travelers, but something far more dangerous, something they had never prepared for. And as the great shadow drew near and the Empire's fleet scrambled in desperation, the humans simply asked if they could get a closer look. The hangar was still filled with tension after the great shadow appeared. The alien commander barked orders, his voice echoing through the vast chamber as fleets scrambled to form defense lines. The Empire's soldiers moved in tight formations, but their eyes flicked nervously toward the human visitors who stood in the middle of the chaos, calm and silent. The captain crossed her arms, her face unreadable. Carter leaned against a wall, scribbling in his notepad as if this was nothing more than a routine checkup, and the alien commander could not believe what he was seeing. The shadow grew closer, swallowing starlight around its enormous frame. Scanners screamed warnings and data streams poured across glowing consoles. The Empire's officers gasped as ancient records resurfaced, identifying the entity as one of the Voidborn, a species that had once reduced entire sectors to silence, long ago believed extinct, but now returning. The commander turned back to the humans, his silver eyes sharp, demanding to know if they had summoned the creature. The captain shook her head with a faint smile, her voice steady. She said, "We have nothing to do with it. You were the ones who woke it, not us." Carter added, "Maybe it just wants to say hello." The soldiers shifted uncomfortably at his casual tone. One muttered that humans must be insane to joke in the presence of death, but the commander was no longer sure if it was madness or a kind of hidden strength. On the bridge of the Empire flagship, panic rippled. Officers shouted, "Coordinate strategies, countermeasures," but none of it seemed enough. The Voidborn moved with eerie grace, its body twisting like smoke and shadow, its size dwarfing even the largest Empire battleships. Weapons fired beams brighter than suns, missiles streaked through the dark, but all of it was swallowed, absorbed by the endless void skin of the monster. Nothing touched it, nothing slowed it. In the middle of this storm, the humans kept their strange calm. The captain requested access to the Empire's archives to understand what this thing was. The commander hesitated, but desperation overpowered pride. He granted it, leading them into a chamber filled with glowing crystals, each holding memories of wars and defeats, of long-forgotten horrors. The humans studied the records with quiet interest. Carter muttered about Earth history, comparing the Voidborn to predators from oceans long ago. The captain traced patterns across the glowing crystal and whispered that fear itself seemed to give the Voidborn power. The Empire officers stared at her, wondering how she could see what they had missed for centuries. Then alarms wailed again. The Voidborn began to tear into the outer fleet. Ships cracked like shells under invisible claws. Screams filled the channels. The commander demanded reinforcements, but it was clear the Empire's lines would not hold. The humans exchanged a glance, and the captain said calmly, "We will help, but on our terms." The commander snapped that humanity had no right to demand anything, but the calm eyes of the captain unsettled him more than the monster outside. She repeated quietly, "Our terms," and somehow he felt forced to agree. The terms were simple: let humanity study the Empire freely, let them walk the halls without chains, and in return they would offer insight, not weapons, not fleets, but something the Empire could not imagine. Perspective. Carter laughed as he said perspective was their best tool. The Empire Council, who had joined by holo transmission, were outraged. They shouted that humans had no authority here, but the commander silenced them because deep inside he wondered if perhaps this perspective was the only chance left. The humans were given access to the tactical feed. They watched as ships fell one by one. Carter leaned over a console, pressing a few buttons, and said, "Your formations are too rigid. The Voidborn adapts to patterns. Stop thinking like machines, think like hunters." One officer snapped that Carter was a fool, but the captain backed him up, explaining in a calm, steady tone that unpredictability was humanity's oldest weapon. She told them how Earth predators had survived by adapting, by changing every moment, never letting an enemy predict the next move. The commander reluctantly adjusted his fleets, breaking them into smaller groups, moving chaotically like a storm instead of a wall. To everyone's shock, the Voidborn hesitated, its strikes missing ships it had easily crushed before its endless shadow flickered uncertain. The alien officers stared at the humans, wide-eyed, whispering that no species had ever made the Voidborn pause before. But victory was far away. The creature adapted again, shifting its form, splitting into tendrils of living dark that wrapped around ships, crushing them whole. The humans did not flinch. The captain studied it with the cold patience of a surgeon and finally said softly, "It is feeding on your fear. Every time you panic, every time you react with desperation, it grows stronger. The Empire's council erupted in disbelief, shouting that fear was natural, unavoidable, but the captain turned to them with steady eyes and said, "Where we come from, fear is constant. Our planet tried to kill us every day, storms, quakes, beasts, diseases, and wars. If we had let fear rule us, we would never have survived." Carter grinned and added that compared to Earth nightmares, this Voidborn looked almost friendly. The words spread like fire among the soldiers. The idea that humanity came from a place more deadly than the Voidborn unsettled them, but also gave them something new: hope. If humans could face endless danger and remain standing, perhaps there was a path here too. The commander seized on it, barking new orders, telling his troops to focus not on the creature's size or terror, but on survival, on fighting like the humans had suggested, in chaos, not in fear. His soldiers rallied, and for the first time in hours the Empire pushed back. As the battle raged, the humans walked calmly among the command stations, answering questions, giving advice. Carter even made a joke about coffee breaks during the apocalypse, and though the alien officers did not laugh, they felt a strange easing in their chests, as if fear had lost a fraction of its grip. The captain whispered to the commander that calm was a weapon, and he realized she was right. Then the Voidborn screamed, not a sound, but a vibration through the void. The Empire fleets trembled, shields flickered, and hulls cracked. It was growing stronger again, but now the humans stepped forward. The captain told the commander to broadcast human voices across the fleet, not commands, not threats, but simple words of calm. Carter spoke into the comms, telling the soldiers to breathe, to fight like storms, not walls, to laugh in the face of terror, even if their throats shook. The strange broadcast rippled through the Empire ship's alien crews, listening to human voices filled with calm, steady rhythm. Something shifted. Fear loosened its hold. The Voidborn's advance slowed again, its form flickering with uncertainty. The commander stared at the humans in awe and dread. He whispered that their words were shaping the battle more than weapons ever could. Still, the danger was not gone. The Voidborn retreated into the shadows for now, but the commander warned it would return stronger and hungrier. The captain nodded calmly and said, "Then we will be ready." She turned to the council, who still trembled on their holo screens, and told them plainly, "You need us and we need you, but if you try to chain us again, we will walk away and face the Voidborn ourselves." The council did not know how to answer. They had ruled the galaxy with fear for countless years, and now a small group of humans had turned that fear upside down. The commander bowed his head reluctantly and agreed to the human terms. As the humans returned to their ship, Carter leaned against the wall and whispered to the captain, "Do you think they will trust us now?" The captain replied quietly, "They are afraid of us more than the Voidborn, and maybe that will keep them listening." Outside the window, the Voidborn's shadow lingered at the edge of the stars, watching, waiting, hungering. The humans gazed at it with calm eyes, unblinking, knowing the real war was only beginning, and the Empire would never look at humanity the same way again. The Empire was quiet after the retreat of the Voidborn, but the silence was heavy. The commander paced inside the grand chamber, his silver skin reflecting the dim light of the glowing walls, his mind still trying to understand the strange humans. They had faced monsters that made galaxies tremble, yet they did not break, they did not even raise their voices. The captain and her crew returned to their ship, watched by thousands of alien eyes. None of those eyes could decide if the humans were brave or insane. The council met in secret, floating above the Empire's capital world, their voices sharp, their fear hidden behind arrogance. They argued over what to do with the humans. Some demanded execution before their influence spread, others whispered that the humans might be the key to survival if the Voidborn returned. Yet all of them agreed on one thing: humanity was dangerous, not because of weapons or fleets, but because of something far worse, something the council could not name. On their small vessel, the humans rested. Carter leaned back in his chair, flipping through notes, while the captain stared out into the dark stars, her expression calm but thoughtful. The engineer Ramirez tapped the console and muttered that the Empire was a mess, too rigid, too arrogant, doomed to collapse. The captain answered softly that arrogance was always fragile. Carter added with a grin that the Empire would break like glass the moment something shook it hard enough. That night, if night could exist in endless space, the humans received an unexpected visitor. A young alien officer slipped into their hangar, her armor scratched, her face pale with fear. She introduced herself in a trembling voice. She said she served the archives. She carried information hidden from the council, information about the Voidborn. The humans listened in silence as she explained the truth. The Empire had not defeated the Voidborn in ancient times. They had only sealed it away using forbidden technology. Now cracks had formed, and the seal was failing. The Empire lied to its people for centuries and lived in fear of the day the monster would return. The captain thanked her gently, her eyes soft but firm. She asked why the officer had risked her life to tell them this. The alien lowered her gaze and said, "Because you do not fear it, and I want to learn how you stand so calm in the face of doom." The captain nodded slowly and promised her safety on their ship. Carter scribbled more notes, muttering that secrets always hid beneath empires like rot beneath polished floors. The next cycle alarms shook the Empire capital. The archives themselves were breached, not by human hands, but by something darker. The Voidborn had left fragments, shadows that slithered through the walls, corrupting data, erasing history. Soldiers fired, but their weapons passed through the creatures like mist. The council panicked, demanding answers. The commander summoned the humans again, his pride buried under desperation. The humans entered the archive halls calm and curious. Ramirez muttered that the place smelled of dust and lies. Carter touched the glowing crystals that stored memory. He winced at the vision's floods of war screams, worlds burning, but also something stranger. He saw the Empire kneeling not to victory but to fear, the fear of truth erased from their history. The captain said quietly, "Fear has ruled you longer than any enemy." The commander clenched his fists, ashamed yet unable to deny her words. The shadows grew bolder, twisting into shapes half alive, half void. They lunged at the soldiers, ripping through armor. The air itself grew heavy with dread, but the humans moved differently. The captain stepped forward slowly, her eyes unblinking. She spoke in a calm voice, telling the soldiers to stop firing, to breathe, to remember they were more than fear. Her tone carried through the chaos, steady as stone. The shadows wavered, flickered, uncertain, as if weakened by the absence of terror. Carter laughed softly, shaking his head. He muttered that back on Earth people faced storms, beasts, plagues, and still they cracked jokes in the middle of it all. He raised his voice and told the soldiers stories of humans fighting impossible odds, not with perfect weapons but with stubborn will. He told them of explorers lost in oceans of ice, of armies marching under fire, of children surviving disasters. His words painted pictures of resilience. The alien soldiers listened, their panic fading. The shadows faltered, retreating back into cracks in the floor. The commander stared in disbelief. Never in his life had words alone driven back the corruption. He whispered that humans were using something more powerful than weapons. The captain turned to him and said, "Calm is power, fear is weakness, and the Voidborn feeds on weakness." The archive survived, but only barely. The officer who had warned the humans thanked them, her eyes shining with something new, hope. She said that others would listen now, others would see that fear was not the only way. But the council was not pleased. They gathered in secret, once more furious that humans were becoming symbols. They demanded action. Some spoke of destroying Earth before humanity grew too strong. Others argued that such a war might doom them all. The council split, their voices sharp enough to shake the chamber. Meanwhile, the humans studied the archives further. Carter discovered fragments of maps, ancient star charts pointing to places erased from records, places the Empire feared too much to name. The captain believed the Voidborn was tied to those lost worlds, that the truth of its birth lay hidden in forgotten ruins. She told the commander plainly, "If you want to survive, you must face what you erased." He resisted. He shouted that some truths were too dangerous, but her calm gaze silenced him. In the end, he agreed for fear of losing everything. The humans and a small escort fleet traveled toward the Forbidden Zone, a region of broken stars wrapped in storms of radiation where no Empire ship dared to go. The journey itself was a test. Systems failed, lights flickered, shadows whispered in the corridors of the ship. Soldiers muttered prayers, but the humans moved through it as if walking in rain. Carter whistled softly. Ramirez joked about Earth commutes being worse. The captain never spoke more than a few words, but a steady presence calmed everyone. When they reached the heart of the zone, they found ruins, massive structures carved into asteroids glowing faintly with energy older than the Empire itself. The ruins pulsed as if alive, and inside the ruins lay records of the Voidborn, not as monsters but as mistakes. They were not predators born from nature, they were creations spawned by fear itself. The Empire long ago had tried to weaponize terror, and their weapon had escaped, becoming hunger without end. The soldiers recoiled, horrified, whispering that their ancestors had doomed them. The commander fell silent, his pride shattered. The captain studied the ruins calmly. She whispered that humanity knew something of this too, because fear created monsters on Earth too, not of shadow, but of war, of cruelty, of destruction. Carter added quietly that humans learned to live with their monsters, not erase them, because erasing only gave them more power. The ruins trembled as if awakened by their discovery. The Voidborn's presence stirred again. The sky above the asteroid darkened. The Empire fleet panicked, shouting warnings, firing weapons into shadows that could not be hit. The humans stood still. The captain raised a hand and told them to stop shooting. Every blast only made the shadows stronger. She told them to remember what they had seen, what they had learned. The soldiers hesitated, torn between instinct and her calm words. The commander finally barked the order to hold fire. Silence fell, only the hum of the ruins remained. The shadows swirled, uncertain, shrinking, as if starving, deprived of fear. The Voidborn's scream echoed across the stars, shaking the hearts of all who heard it, but the humans did not flinch. They stood at the center of the storm, silent, unyielding. The scream faded, the shadows retreated, the Voidborn withdrew once more, leaving behind silence deeper than before. The Empire soldiers gasped, realizing they were still alive. The commander looked at the humans, his eyes wide, his voice low and trembling. He whispered, "You are not like any species we have known." The captain replied softly, "We are only human, but perhaps that is enough." They returned to the capital with the truth in their hands, the council furious yet shaken, the Empire divided between those who still clung to fear and those who began to believe in a new way. The humans had lit a spark, and sparks in the dark were dangerous. As their ship rested above the Empire's shining world, Carter looked at the stars and muttered that the Voidborn would return stronger. The captain nodded, calm as always. She whispered, "And when it does, the Empire will have to choose fear or humanity." And somewhere in the endless dark, the Voidborn stirred, hungering not only for the Empire but for the strange new species that did not tremble in its presence. Far beyond the Empire, beyond the broken ruins and the glowing storm, something watched. It was older than the Empire, older than the Voidborn itself, silent and patient in the dark. It had seen the arrival of humans, it had seen their strange calm, and it whispered through shadows that this was the beginning of change. Fleets of hidden ships Moved in silence, cloaked in black, their commanders staring at screens replaying the moment humans faced the Voidborn without fear. They could not understand it, yet they felt threatened by it. The Empire meanwhile struggled to keep order on its worlds. Fear rippled through every street, through every hall of power. Whispers of the Voidborn spread like fire, and with those whispers came tales of humans walking calmly among the flames. Some citizens began to believe the stories, some even painted images of human faces on walls calling them defenders, while others spat in disgust calling them liars and parasites. The council argued more than ever, their voices harsh, their pride wounded, but none could erase the truth that humans had stood when the Empire shook. On their ship the humans gathered, Carter tapping at his screen, Ramirez fiddling with broken wires, the captain silent in her chair, her eyes distant as though she was listening to something only she could hear. Carter muttered that the Empire was crumbling from inside, not because of monsters but because of lies. Ramirez agreed, saying their pride had blinded them for too long. The captain finally spoke, her voice quiet but heavy. She said, then our task is not only the Voidborn but the Empire itself. Because if they fall, the galaxy will fall with them. The commander summoned them again. This time his tone was different, no arrogance, no threats. His voice carried the weight of someone who had seen the edge of destruction. He confessed that other enemies were stirring, not just the Voidborn but old rivals who had waited in shadows, waiting for the Empire to weaken, and now the humans had arrived to make the cracks even wider. Carter smirked and said, we have that effect everywhere we go. The Hidden Watchers made their move. A fleet of black ships pierced into Empire territory, silent weapons cutting through border stations before alarms even rose. Entire outposts vanished into dust in minutes. The attackers did not announce themselves, they left no survivors, but messages leaked through, whispers of a forgotten race returning to claim vengeance, a race that had fought the Empire ages ago and been nearly wiped out. The Empire panicked again, soldiers rushed to defend borders. The council screamed for unity, but their voices shook. The people looked to the humans with wide eyes, some begging them to help, some demanding they leave at once. The humans ignored both cries, instead they studied the new threat. Ramirez pointed out that the attack patterns were not random, they were hunting something. Carter agreed, saying it was not destruction they wanted, it was knowledge. The captain nodded silently, her gaze hard. She said, they are not only enemies, they are searching for what we found in the ruins, they want the truth of the Voidborn. The commander confirmed her fears soon after his agents discovered fragments of intercepted transmissions. The hidden race wanted the archives, they wanted the seal technology that had once trapped the Voidborn. If they gained it, they could bend fear itself as a weapon, not only against the Empire but against the whole galaxy. The council demanded extermination, they ordered fleets to launch immediately, but the humans shook their heads. The captain told them plainly, you cannot fight shadows with walls. You must fight them with light. So the humans and a reluctant escort of Empire ships ventured into the borderlands, following the trail of destroyed stations. They arrived at a shattered moon, its surface cracked, its core still glowing faintly. There they found the enemy waiting, black ships circling like predators. The humans watched from their bridge, calm as ever. Carter muttered that they looked like vultures. Ramirez added that vultures at least waited until things were dead. The captain remained quiet, her eyes sharp as the black fleet moved in. The battle erupted, beams of light and shadow colliding, explosions tearing across the moon's surface. The Empire fleet fought with discipline, but fear gnawed at them every time a black ship slipped past their lines. Their formations broke. Carter slammed his fist on the console and shouted at them to stop thinking like statues, fight like storms, move like rivers. The captain raised her voice, calm yet firm, reminding them that they were not facing gods but predators, and predators bled. Her words spread across the comms again. The Empire ships adjusted, breaking ranks, moving unpredictably, confusing the Black Fleet. For the first time the Empire pushed them back, but the victory was thin because the enemy's goal was not the fleet, it was the archives hidden beneath the moon, the ruins where more secrets of the Voidborn slept. The humans realized too late as shadows slipped into the cracks beneath the moon and vanished with stolen crystals. The commander cursed in rage, soldiers shouted in panic, the council screamed through holochannels blaming the humans for every loss, but the captain silenced them, her voice sharper than ever. She said, your enemies already had their hands on the door before we came here. We are the only reason you are still alive. Now listen, or you will not live to argue again. Her words froze the council, their pride struck silent. Back on their ship, the humans studied what was stolen. Carter pieced together fragments from their scans. Ramirez built models on the console, and the captain stared at the maps glowing before them. She whispered that the enemy wanted to control the Voidborn, not destroy it. They believed fear could be a chain to drag the monster like a weapon. Carter shook his head, muttering that you cannot chain nightmares. Ramirez agreed, saying nightmares chained only grow hungrier. The hidden fleet retreated into deep space carrying their prize, and behind them the Voidborn stirred once more, its voice rippling across the stars, not words but hunger, a hunger that pressed into every mind, every soul. The Empire's people fell to their knees shivering with terror, but the humans stood straight, unmoved. Carter whispered that the Voidborn could roar as much as it wanted. Earth had roared louder. The commander asked what they should do, his voice stripped of all pride. For the first time in his life the captain answered calmly, you must face your truth, stop hiding, stop lying to your people, stop feeding fear, and start teaching them to resist it. The commander frowned, saying that people could not simply stop fearing, but Carter cut in, saying maybe not, but they can laugh, they can fight, they can learn, and if they learn then maybe the Voidborn will starve. The Empire began to change slowly. Whispers spread of human teachings, soldiers repeated human stories of Earth dangers. People began to see fear not as destiny but as choice. Some clung to the old ways, trembling in the dark, but others lit candles in defiance, simple candles that glowed against the endless night. The hidden race saw this too. They watched with unease because fear was their greatest weapon, and if the Empire lost its fear they would lose everything. They vowed to strike harder, faster, before humanity's influence grew too deep. So their ships gathered in hidden sectors, their leaders whispering of an invasion not to conquer worlds but to shatter humanity before it spread like fire. And in the middle of all this the humans sat together in their small ship, Carter leaning back smiling faintly, Ramirez muttering about repairs, the captain staring out at the stars, her voice soft but steady. She said, "They will come for us soon." Carter asked with a grin. "And what do we do when they come?" The captain answered as if speaking to the stars themselves. "We do what humans always do. We endure, we adapt, and we refuse to kneel." Far away in the endless void, the shadow of the Voidborn opened eyes that were not eyes, and the galaxy trembled, knowing the real storm had not even begun. The Empire was restless, whole worlds filled with rumors of the humans and their strange calm. Some said they were demons wearing flesh, others said they were saviors sent by forgotten gods, but all agreed that humanity was different. The council could not decide what to do. Their debates grew louder, their pride wounded by every whisper of doubt. Meanwhile, the commander kept his focus on the humans. His instincts told him that these outsiders held the key to survival, even if that survival came with shame. On their ship, the humans worked in silence. Carter scribbled maps on his screen, Ramirez cursed at broken wires, and the captain watched the stars, her gaze steady as stone. The Empire demanded answers about Earth. They wanted to know what kind of world could create people who stood against fear itself. They wanted proof, and soon they would get it. A transmission came from Earth, a scheduled check from the home fleet, but when it played across the Empire's channels the aliens saw what they had never imagined. Vast human fleets filled the screen, ships sleek and powerful, built not for show but for war and survival, lines of carriers, destroyers and strange crafts moving with practiced discipline. Earth's admirals spoke in calm voices asking for updates from the expedition. They did not shout, they did not boast, they spoke like people used to command hardship, as if danger was normal. The Empire's officers gasped, their jaws tight, their hearts racing. Earth's fleet was smaller than the Empire's massive armadas, but there was something about it, something sharper, something hungrier. The way the ships moved, the way the humans spoke, it felt like predators circling the void. Carter smirked when he saw their shock. He muttered, "Welcome to Earth." The council erupted. They shouted that humanity had lied, that they had hidden their strength. The commander silenced them, his voice cold. He said, "Strength is not the same as survival. They are calm because they know what it means to bleed. They are calm because they have lived with death at their door." The council tried to deny it, but the images of Earth's fleet burned in their minds. The transmission continued, showing not only ships but glimpses of the world itself. Earth, forests, storms, deserts, oceans, endless variety, skies filled with lightning, waves crashing against jagged cliffs. Carter whispered proudly, "This is our cradle." Ramirez added with a grin, "And it never wanted us to live, yet we did." The captain remained quiet, but her eyes softened with memory as if she could still hear the thunder of home. The Empire's citizens who saw the broadcast were shaken. Some fell deeper into fear, whispering that humans were monsters. Others began to admire them, wondering what kind of people could rise from such a world. The council panicked, trying to suppress the images, but it was too late. The truth of Earth had slipped into every corner of the Empire. Then came the attack. The hidden race struck again, this time at a border world rich with resources. Their black ships cut through defenses in minutes. The Empire cried for help, their fleets too far to arrive in time. The commander turned to the humans, his pride swallowed, and asked, "Will you fight with us?" The captain answered calmly, "We will go, not for you, but for the people who cannot defend themselves." Carter added with a grin, "Besides, we could use the exercise." The humans flew with a small detachment of Empire ships into the burning skies of the border world. Fire rained from orbit, cities crumbled, civilians screamed as shadows swept across streets. The Black Fleet unleashed not only weapons but fear itself, strange waves that broke the minds of soldiers, making them flee before battles even began. The Empire's lines shattered at once. But the humans did not break. The captain ordered calm voices across the comms. Carter shouted jokes into the chaos. Ramirez guided ships through impossible maneuvers. Their words carried more than commands, they carried defiance. The Empire's soldiers felt it, their fear loosened. They began to fight again, not perfectly, not bravely, but with enough strength to hold. The Black Fleet turned its focus on the humans, their ships converging, weapons blazing, shadows stretching like claws. But the humans fought with something the enemy did not understand: unpredictability. Carter laughed as he sent his craft spinning between enemy fire. Ramirez overloaded engines, forcing impossible bursts of speed. The captain gave orders that made no sense until they worked. They moved like storms, like chaos itself, and the enemy could not adapt fast enough. The battle raged for hours, the border world scarred beyond recognition, but in the end the Black Fleet withdrew, dragging wrecks behind them. The humans had turned the tide. The Empire cheered, but their cheer was shaky, their eyes wide as they looked upon the humans and wondered if they had seen victory or the rise of something even more dangerous. After the battle, the commander confronted the humans. He asked why they had risked so much, why they had fought for a world that was not their own. The captain answered, because survival means nothing if you cannot stand for others. Carter added with a grin, also we do not like bullies. Ramirez smirked and said, and because it was fun. The commander shook his head, unable to understand their strange mix of humor and conviction, yet unable to deny their strength. But not all were grateful. Whispers spread faster than fire. Some called the humans heroes, others called them liars, conspirators, threats. The council leaned into the fear, declaring that humanity was plotting to overthrow the Empire. They showed the fleet of Earth again, twisting it into an image of doom. They painted humans as predators waiting for weakness, waiting to strike. Entire worlds began to riot, torn between trust and terror. The humans knew what was happening. Carter muttered, politics, the only plague worse than war. Ramirez grumbled that empires were the same everywhere. The captain simply said, calm, we will endure. But even as she spoke, her eyes were troubled, because she knew fear was not only the weapon of the Voidborn or the hidden race, it was also the weapon of rulers who feared losing control. Late in the quiet of their ship, another transmission came, but this one was not meant for Empire ears. It was from the hidden race, their voices cold and sharp. They spoke directly to the humans. They said, you do not belong here. Leave the Empire to its death, or we will bring death to Earth. The captain stared at the message, her face unreadable. Carter cursed under his breath. Ramirez clenched his fists. The captain finally said in a voice like steel, let them come. The hidden race wanted Earth. They wanted the cradle of humanity because they feared it more than fleets. They feared the spirit that Earth had forged in its people. They knew if the Empire learned to follow that spirit, their own shadow would vanish. So they plotted an attack not on the Empire but on the blue planet itself. The humans prepared in silence. Carter sharpened maps, Ramirez reinforced systems. The captain stood at the window watching the stars. She whispered, Earth has survived everything. It will survive this too, but we must be ready. In the Empire, whispers grew louder, divisions sharper. The council planned desperate measures. They wanted to chain the humans, control them, use their calm as a weapon. But the commander saw the truth. He told them plainly, you cannot chain fire, you cannot chain storms. If you try, you will only burn yourselves. But the council did not listen. They had ruled by fear too long to surrender it so easily. And far away in the black between stars, the hidden race gathered its fleets, pointing them toward Earth, their leaders hissing in voices like knives. They promised to end the myth of humanity before it spread across the galaxy. They promised to show the Empire that humans could bleed. But in the silence of their small ship, the humans only prepared, calm, steady, unbroken, ready to defend the cradle that had forged them, ready to show the Empire what Earth truly meant. The galaxy trembled as two truths moved toward each other, the truth of fear and the truth of humanity, and somewhere in the void, the Voidborn stirred, hungrier than ever, waiting for the moment when fear would open the final door. The dark between stars was not silent anymore. It carried the rumble of hidden fleets gathering in shadows, waiting with weapons sharpened against the cradle of humanity. The hidden race moved with purpose, their ships sleek, their commands whispered like knives through the void. They feared Earth more than the Empire. They feared the spirit that had made humans stand calm against the Voidborn. They feared laughter in the face of monsters. They feared courage that refused to kneel. The Empire was blind to it. They argued in their halls, their council split and trembling. Some demanded to chain humanity and use them as a tool. Others shouted to exile them before their shadows spread too far. The commander warned them that chains would only shatter in their hands, but pride deafened them. They had ruled by fear for centuries, and now they could not imagine any power greater than it. On their small ship, the humans felt the storm coming. Carter leaned over his console, muttering darkly. Ramirez slammed a wrench against a panel, sparks flying. The captain stood at the window, staring into the void, her silence heavy. Carter asked finally, what do we do when they strike? The captain answered without turning, we fight and we endure. Ramirez snorted, saying, like always. The hidden race struck first not at Earth but at the space between. They laid a trap, a string of false signals designed to pull the human expedition away from safety. The Empire ships followed, thinking they were hunting shadows. Instead they found the truth waiting, a black fleet rising out of the dark, faster and sharper than anything they had seen before. The battle began with no warning. Beams cut through Empire ships in the first moments. Entire cruisers split apart. Soldiers screamed as fear crashed through their minds. The hidden race unleashed waves of psychic force that broke lines before weapons even fired. The Empire fleet collapsed at once, running in panic, their formations torn apart. But the humans did not run. Carter laughed into the comms. Ramirez barked insults at the enemy. The captain gave orders in a calm voice as steady as stone. Their words spread across the channels, cutting through panic. The Empire soldiers felt something strange in their chests, not the weight of fear but the spark of defiance. They began to slow their retreat. They began to fight. The hidden fleet turned on the humans, black ships converging like wolves around prey, but they found prey that bit back. Carter spun his craft through fire trails, firing bursts that struck like lightning. Ramirez overloaded engines, dragging his ship through maneuvers that looked like madness but tore enemy lines apart. The captain's orders wove them together like a storm, three voices shaping chaos into resistance. The Empire soldiers saw it. They watched humans fighting without fear, and something inside them shifted. They steadied their hands, they aimed their guns, they fired not with desperation but with purpose, and slowly the tide of battle bent, not toward victory but toward survival. The hidden race grew frustrated. They pushed harder, their psychic waves pressing against human minds, but the humans did not bend. Carter shouted jokes through the pressure. Ramirez cursed them in 2 languages. The captain's voice cut through the storm, steady and sharp. Fear is only a shadow. It cannot cut you unless you let it. Her words reached the Empire ships as well, and for the first time soldiers spoke back to the dark, refusing to kneel. The fight dragged into hours, ships breaking, wrecks drifting across the void. The hidden race lost vessels, but took many in return. They realized brute force would not win against this strange defiance, so they shifted tactics. While the battle raged, a second fleet slipped past unseen, moving toward Earth itself. The captain knew it. She felt the pattern in the enemy move. She ordered Carter and Ramirez to regroup. She told the commander the truth. They are not fighting to win here. They are fighting to keep us away from Earth. The commander's face went pale. His voice broke when he asked, "Then what do we do?" The captain answered, "We go home." But the path home was not clear. The enemy fleet tightened around them, ships like jaws snapping shut. Carter cursed. Ramirez shouted. The captain gave the order, "Break through." Carter laughed and drove his ship straight into the thickest fire. Ramirez followed, spinning his vessel in impossible arcs. The captain led them through the chaos, their small squad punching a hole wide enough for the Empire survivors to follow. They broke free, battered, scarred, but alive. The Empire ships scattered to regroup, but the humans flew straight toward Earth. The captain silent, her face hard. Carter muttering promises. Ramirez gripping the controls tight, none of them speaking the fear in their hearts, but all of them feeling it. On Earth the alarm rose. Fleets scrambled. Citizens gathered under stormy skies, staring up at the heavens as warnings spread. The hidden race had come, their ships darkening the stars above the blue planet. Earth stood ready, its fleets aligned, admirals calm, their orders sharp, but even they knew this would not be easy, because the enemy was not only ships and weapons, it was fear itself. The first clash above Earth was like thunder, fleets colliding, beams slicing the sky, explosions flashing brighter than lightning. The hidden race pressed hard, striking at weak points, striking at minds. Soldiers screamed as shadows clawed at their thoughts, but the humans on Earth were not like the Empire. They had lived with fear every day, storms, quakes, wars, disasters. Earth had never been gentle. It had raised them in hardship, and in hardship they found strength. They fought back with steel and fire. And laughter in the dark. The expedition arrived battered, but in time. Carter's voice roared across the comms announcing their return. Ramirez barked out orders to cover flanks. The captain's calm voice guided the chaos into order. Earth's admirals listened, and for the first time 2 human fleets fought together, one born from the cradle and one carrying the galaxy's burden. The hidden race had not expected this. They thought Earth would cower. They thought humans were strong only in legend. Instead they found themselves facing predators that had been tempered by storms since birth. The Black Fleet began to falter, their psychic waves breaking against human will, their formations shredded by unpredictable tactics. But the battle was not over. The Voidborn stirred again, its hunger rising in the middle of chaos. Its voice pressed into every mind across the battlefield. Not words, but need, endless need. Even the humans felt it heavy in their chests. Ramirez whispered that it was growing stronger. Carter spat that it could scream all it wanted. The captain stayed silent, her eyes sharp, her hand steady. The Empire fleet arrived late, their ships limping but ready. They saw Earth fighting, they saw humanity standing unbroken against shadows, and for the first time in their history they felt shame, not the shame of defeat, but the shame of weakness compared to people they once dismissed. They joined the fight with new resolve, their weapons cutting through black holes, their soldiers holding fast. The hidden race realized they could not win. They began to retreat, pulling wrecks behind them, but their leaders swore the fight was not over. They promised to return, and when they did, Earth would burn. But for that moment Earth stood free, the humans blooded but unbowed, the Empire shaken but alive, the Voidborn hungrier than ever. After the battle, Earth and the expedition met face to face, admirals shaking hands with the captain, Carter and Ramirez sharing laughs with soldiers, stories traded across scars and bruises, but the joy was thin. Behind it lay the shadow of what they all felt. The Voidborn was waking, and the hidden race would not stop until they fed it with fear. The commander stood among them, watching Earth with wide eyes. He whispered to himself, "Now I understand why they do not fear, because they were born from storms." The captain heard him and answered softly, "No, we fear, but we do not kneel. That is the difference." And in the silence of the void, the Voidborn stirred again, hungrier, stronger, waiting for the galaxy to break, waiting for the moment when courage would falter and fear would open the door. Whispers filled the Empire worlds after the battle over Earth. Some called the humans saviors, others called them threats, but no one could ignore them anymore. The council tried to control the story. They called humanity reckless. They claimed Earth had lured the hidden race into the galaxy, but the truth had already spread. Millions had seen humans fight without breaking, millions had seen them laugh while facing death, and the Empire could not bury that image no matter how hard they tried. The commander warned the council that dividing the people would only weaken them further. He said the hidden race would not stop. He said the Voidborn were stirring, but the council refused to listen. They feared losing power more than losing lives. In secret they plotted to use humans as tools. They whispered of ways to bind them, ways to turn their strange calm into weapons under Empire control. They did not understand that what they wanted could not be caged. Meanwhile, Earth did not rest. Their fleets circled the skies, their soldiers trained harder, their leaders spoke to the people with calm words of truth. The danger was not gone, it was growing, and they must stand together. Humans across the world listened, and for once they put aside divisions, because survival was not for nations anymore, it was for all. On the expedition ship, Carter stared at star maps, muttering about traps. Ramirez tightened bolts until his hands were raw. The captain watched from the window, her face steady but her mind heavy. She knew the hidden race would strike again, but not with brute force this time. They had seen Earth fight, they had seen humans stand, and now they would seek another path. Shadows did not win by strength, shadows won by slipping into hearts. Soon the reports began, quiet, at first a whisper from one world, then another. Strange riots, sudden betrayal, soldiers turning on their own ships, firing on allies, panic spreading faster than fire. The hidden race had changed its strategy. They no longer attacked from the outside, they attacked from within. They whispered into minds, sowing doubt. They turned fear into a blade, cutting empires apart without firing a shot. The commander begged the council to act to unite worlds before the shadow spread, but the council argued instead. They accused humans of planting the doubt. They said fear came from seeing humans too calm, too strange. They painted humans as the cause of unrest, not the cure, and in the streets of the empire whispers grew darker. Mobs gathered, fires burned, names of humans cursed alongside the hidden race. Carter slammed his fist against the table when he saw the news. Ramirez spat that the empire was blind. The captain only said calm because anger was what the shadows wanted, but even she felt the weight in her chest. Even she knew that a war of whispers was harder than a war of fire. Then came the betrayal. A fleet of empire ships was turned not by force but by fear. Their captains swore loyalty to the hidden race. They opened gates, they revealed secrets, they cut supply lines, and entire sectors fell into chaos without a battle. Worlds surrendered to shadows because they believed resistance was hopeless. The humans could not watch in silence. They went to the commander, offering their help. He hesitated, torn between pride and survival, but at last he nodded. He said, "If you can break their hold, if you can fight shadows in the dark, then perhaps we can endure." The captain answered, "We do not fight shadows with light, we fight them with truth." The humans moved across empire space, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as voices. They spoke to soldiers broken by whispers. They showed them images of earth storms, quakes, disasters that had tried to kill humanity since the beginning. They said, "We survived this, we survived worse, you can survive too." They carried laughter into halls filled with silence. Carter joked with miners on dying worlds. Ramirez told stories of earth storms to frighten children. The captain spoke few words, but every word cut through fear like steel. Slowly cracks began to show in the hidden race's plan. Whispers did not spread as fast where humans walked, shadows faltered where truth was spoken, but the enemy did not stop. They grew more desperate, their whispers sharper, more cruel. They began to reach into human minds as well, pressing against their calm, trying to break the unbreakable. Carter heard voices in the night. Ramirez woke sweating from dreams. The captain felt the weight of silence heavier than ever, but they did not kneel, they endured. And their endurance gave others strength. The hidden race grew angry, and when anger burned away their patience, they struck again, this time not with fleets, not with whispers, but with assassins, twisted soldiers carved by shadow into weapons. They sent them into empire cities, into council halls, into ships. They killed without mercy, their blades dripping with fear itself. The empire reeled, unable to protect its people. One night on their ship, the assassins came silent as ghosts. Carter was the first to hear the sound. He rolled from his bunk just as a blade cut through the air. Ramirez roared, and threw a wrench. The captain moved like lightning, her pistol firing into the dark. Shadows writhed across the walls. The assassins struck again and again, but the humans fought with fury and calm. Carter laughing through blood, Ramirez cursing every strike, the captain's voice steady, guiding them through chaos. At last the last assassin fell broken on the floor, its body fading into black smoke. The commander arrived after the fight, his face pale, his hands shaking. He whispered, "They are no longer content with whispers, they will kill you to break us." The captain answered, "Then let them try." But even as she spoke, she knew the war was changing. The hidden race was not only feeding fear, they were feeding the voidborn. Every scream, every panic, every whisper of hopelessness was fuel, and somewhere in the dark between stars the voidborn was growing stronger. It stretched across the void like a shadow of hunger, waiting for the moment when fear would be enough to open the final door. On Earth, scientists studied fragments of enemy ships. They discovered strange signals embedded in their systems, frequencies that matched the whispers of fear. They realized the hidden race was not acting alone. They were servants of the voidborn channels, carrying its hunger into every mind. Earth's leaders spoke with the captain in secret. They said, "If the voidborn rises fully, nothing will stand against it, not Earth, not the Empire, not even the hidden race itself." The captain answered, "Then we must not let it rise." And so humanity prepared again. Earth hardened its defenses, fleets trained harder, alliances were forged in fire. Carter, Ramirez, and the captain carried truth into dark places, breaking whispers where they could, lifting soldiers who had lost hope. But they knew the shadow war was only beginning. They knew the voidborn was waiting. The council still plotted, blinded by fear. They whispered of binding humanity, of seizing Earth, of turning defiance into chains. But even among them, some began to doubt. Some remembered the battle over Earth, some remembered calm voices in chaos, and they wondered if perhaps the humans were not the threat but the only hope left. The hidden race saw this too, and they knew time was running short. They prepared a strike, not against fleets, not against worlds, but against the heart of the empire itself. They would strike the capital, they would turn the council into shadows, they would plunge the empire into fear so deep it could never rise again. And far away in the silence of space the Voidborn stirred, hungrier than ever, shadows stretching wider, whispers growing louder, waiting for the war of fear to break into, the war of the end. The Empire capital had always been a place of pride, towers stretching above seas of light, ships rising and falling through sky lanes, voices filling the air with the rhythm of power. But now the air was heavy with silence, markets empty, halls dim, whispers of fear leaking through every street, because everyone knew the hidden race was coming, and they knew whispers alone would not stop this storm. The council met in their chamber, marble walls and golden light, but no comfort remained. They shouted at one another, voices sharp, pride and fear clashing like blades. Some demanded to strike first, others to hide and seal the gates. One even suggested surrender to the hidden race, thinking survival possible through chains. The commander stood silent, listening, until at last he said, "No chain will hold shadows, no wall will stop them, only courage can, and for that you need the humans." The council hissed in anger at the word humans. They had wanted to bind them, they had wanted to blame them, but deep down they knew the commander was right. Still pride clung like a disease, and pride is harder to kill than fear. Meanwhile above Earth the human fleet moved restless. Carter muttered over his console. Ramirez struck panels with impatience. The captain stood quiet, her eyes fixed on stars. When the call came she did not flinch, she only said, "Prepare yourselves, because this is the end, one way or another." They flew fast, cutting across the void into Empire space, and every system they passed showed signs of shadow worlds torn by riots, fleets broken by whispers, assassins striking in silence. Fear had eaten deep, and yet when those worlds saw the humans pass, something sparked again. Cheers rising through silence, voices shouting in defiance, because they remembered the ones who did not kneel. The hidden race struck before the humans arrived, black ships rising out of the dark surrounding the capital, their fleet vast, their weapons sharp, their whispers pressing into every mind. Citizens clutched their heads, soldiers screamed at shadow, streets filled with panic. The council froze as assassins appeared inside their own halls, knives dripping with fear itself. The commander drew his weapon and fought his own council guards who had fallen to whispers, blood staining golden floors as chaos tore the chamber apart. The humans broke into the battle. Carter laughed into the comms, his voice a torch in the dark. Ramirez barked curses and jokes at once. The captain spoke calm orders that cut through screams. Their small fleet dove into fire, tearing black ships apart, their movements wild yet sharp like storms unleashed. Empire soldiers saw them and steadied their hands. They fought not for council, not for pride, but for survival alongside humans. The hidden race pressed harder, black waves of psychic force crashing into minds, ships tearing through lines. Carter's laughter wavered for the first time. Ramirez gritted his teeth until blood touched his lips. The captain's voice cracked only once, but they did not stop, and in their defiance the Empire found strength. The commander fought his way out of the chamber, blood on his uniform, his eyes hard. He called his fleets to hold the line. He shouted words he had learned from humans. Fear is only a shadow, it cannot cut you unless you let it. The soldiers listened, and the tide bent, though slowly, though painfully it bent. But the hidden race had a final move. In the deepest chamber of their flagship they opened a gate, not of metal but of hunger, a wound torn into the void itself, and through it the Voidborn stirred, its voice spilling across every mind, not words but need, endless hunger. Fear sharpened into claws that dug into hearts, ships froze, soldiers dropped weapons, citizens screamed as if their souls were ripped open. The Voidborn was coming, not as whispers, not as shadow, but as itself. The captain felt it, Carter felt it, Ramirez felt it, their hearts crushed under weight, but still they stood. The captain ordered Carter and Ramirez to hold the line while she drove their ship toward the heart of the enemy fleet. Carter shouted she was mad, Ramirez roared that it was suicide, but she only said calm, and her voice carried through chaos. She said, "If the door opens we all fall." Her ship cut through fire trails, enemy vessels swarming like predators. Carter and Ramirez cursed but followed because they knew she was right, because turning back was death anyway. Together they carved a path, ships exploding around them, enemy screams flooding comms, until at last they reached the gate. The sight burned their eyes, a wound of shadow stretching wider with each second, shapes moving inside, hunger spilling across the void, the Voidborn pressing through. Carter felt laughter die in his throat, Ramirez felt rage fade into despair, the captain felt silence press against her soul. But then she spoke, and her voice broke the weight. She said, "We are human, we fear, but we do not kneel." Her words spread across comms, through Empire ships into minds crushed by shadow, and for a moment, only a moment, the weight eased. Soldiers screamed in defiance, weapons fired again, fleets surged against black ships. Carter roared with laughter once more, Ramirez cursed so loud the comms nearly broke, and the humans drove forward. The captain gave the order for final strike. Carter overloaded his engines, Ramirez redirected weapons. The Empire commander aligned his fleet for one last push. They struck the gate with everything, beams ripping through the wound, torpedoes burning through shadow. The humans dove into the heart of the dark, fire tearing around them until the gate shook. The Voidborn screamed, not in words but in hunger, denied. The wound trembled, collapsed upon itself, dragging black ships into nothingness, tearing the hidden race apart in a storm of shadow. Silence fell, wrecks drifting, bodies frozen, stars burning. Calm again, the Voidborn sealed away but not destroyed, only sleeping deeper, hunger waiting still. But for that moment the capital stood, the Empire stood, Earth stood. The commander looked at the humans, his face pale, his voice shaking when he asked, "How do you fight when fear crushes everything?" Carter laughed, Ramirez spat. The captain answered simply, "We remember that fear is only a shadow, and shadows vanish when we endure." The council broken, many dead survivors silent, no longer spoke of binding humans, no longer whispered of chains. They had seen what pride had nearly cost them, they had seen what courage had given them, and they bowed their heads not in surrender but in respect. On Earth people cheered across the Empire, survivors lifted their voices, ships lit their beacons in unity, but in the silence of space the Voidborn waited hungrier than ever, shadows coiled deeper than before. The war was not won, only delayed, but for now humanity had proven what the Empire could not, that fear might strike, but courage endures, and no shadow, no hunger, no Voidborn could erase that. The humans stood together, Carter grinning through scars, Ramirez cursing about repairs, the captain quiet, eyes sharp as ever. They knew this was not the end, but they also knew something greater had begun, because now the galaxy had seen the truth. Humans stumbled into an empire and barely reacted, and that calm had changed everything forever.